Hello my friends, today we are going to edit this long exposure image. I took this image a few days ago and as you can see over here I shot it at 240 seconds exposure. That is exactly 4 minutes. And the reason why I did that, there's two reasons. One, I want to get the water really smooth. As you can see, for example, here I took this one at 20 seconds and you can still see texture into the water. So on the 4-minute one, which one was it? I can't find it now. There you go. And this one, the water is really smooth. Another reason why I took a 4-minute exposure is because this is a very popular place. This is Wolf's Neck State Park in Freeport, Maine. And there's tons and tons of people at all times here, especially because right here, I don't know if you can tell, but on top of this tree on the island, there is an osprey nest. So people often come to watch the ospreys. It just so happened it was very high tide and there were a lot of people in here, and I took the long exposure to make those people not show up in the image. If you're not familiar with long exposure, if you take a 4-minute or longer, I use, by the way, I use the Breakthrough 15 stop from Breakthrough Photography 15 stop and the filter to get this 4-minute exposure. And when you take a long exposure like this, everything that moves through the frame, it will not show up. So if you go in a very busy city and you take a really long exposure, all those people moving and cars and stuff is not going to show up, and then you will get this empty streets, and the whatever you're photographing is still there and very sharp and all of that, but you do not show the people. Now, the reason why this guy is still showing in my image, even with the 4-minute exposure, that is because he stood very still for about over 2 minutes in there, and he just left an imprint on my image. And I could remove him in Photoshop, but I quite like that touch. It's like a person, and we don't know who it is because we can't see it clearly, but it just makes, I think it makes a nice touch. I do have a very bad vignetting here from this filter as I was shooting wide open at 24mm. I use my Sony 24-105 at f11, and because of that I think I will crop those corners. So let's start with that. I'll take my crop tool. I could just Photoshop those out if I want to keep the resolution, but there's nothing really interesting in those corners anyway, so let's just crop it out. I will go with something like that. And that is looking better. Maybe we'll leave a little bit more on the top. Let's see. We can Photoshop those corners, make them better, but I think this is good for now. And also I want to make sure that my horizon is straight, and I will use this angle tool over here. Just click on it, and then you click on your horizon on one side and then click on the other side, and there you go. Now we have a straight horizon. Click enter to take the changes. Now let's start with global adjustments. I like the white balance the way it is, so I would leave it like that, but I do want to add just a little bit of contrast, not too much. I'll bring down the highlights a little bit. That brings a little bit more detail into the sky. I want to open the shadows, not too much. I still want to have some shadows. I will increase the whites. I'm going to hold down Option while I increase the whites because I do not want to blow up any kind of highlights. And that is too bright. I'll bring it down. And then the blacks, I'll bring the blacks down a little bit, just until I have a little bit of pure blacks, and that looks good to me. Now I want to bring in more detail into the sky, and for that I will go into my masking tool and select sky. With that select sky selected, I will bring down the exposure just a little bit to bring out a little bit of that detail into the sky, and that looks wonderful. Now I also want to add another mask, and I'll click on this plus icon over here, and I will put a linear gradient and just darken it from the top part just to bring the viewer's eye onto the center of the image. And here I'll take the exposure down just a tiny little bit, not too much, because I don't want to make that obvious. I think I want to crop it just a little bit more to get rid of these branches here on the left side. So go back into the crop tool and let's see, just maybe like that. And that looks good to me. I want to make sure I leave kind of the same amount onto the right as is on the left. So maybe I'll move it just a little bit, make sure it's kind of centered. And I like that. Click OK. So we did our, base exposure. I want to add a little bit of texture, maybe 21, that looks good. Just a little bit of clarity, 12. maybe that's good. And then some vibrance, maybe 19, that looks wonderful. I am going to go down. I'm not going to work with the calibration today. I'm not going to work with any of this stuff. I will just go to sharpening. And here I will leave it at the default at 40. But on the mask, I will hold down Option and move it to the right to make sure I'm only sharpening the island and the stone. And then on the very bottom, I will make sure I'll click Remove Chromatic Aberration and enable Profile Correction. And now we are ready to move into Photoshop. To move this image into Photoshop, I will click Command E, and Lightroom, it will send my image into Photoshop where we can further do our edits. Now here is our image in Photoshop, and the first thing I want to do is remove this branch on the top left corner. So I will take my lasso tool and just go and loosely, select it, and then I'll go Shift Delete and make sure I choose Content Aware Fill. And now click OK, and Photoshop will do its best to remove it, but because I had a feathering at 8 pixels, as you see the edges still has a little bit of remnants. So I will use this patch tool and just select those edges. Just like that, and then I'll drag it right next to it, and now we corrected that corner. I also have this corner over here where it still has a little bit of that vignette, so I'll just use the patch tool, drag that in. I'll do the same with the corner on the left bottom, and we are good now. Command D to get rid of the marching ants. And let's see, what I would like to do now is to maybe sharpen these rocks a little bit. To sharpen my image, I will go Command J to duplicate my layer, and then with the layer 1 selected, I want to go to Filter, Other, and High Pass Filter. With the High Pass Filter, I want to click on the rocks here, and it looks like the radius of 2.2 works perfectly for this. So I will click OK, and then I will change the blending mode from normal to overlay. And now we are sharpening these rocks, but we are also sharpening the water and the sky and everything else. And I don't want to do that. So what I will do, I will hold down Option while clicking on this mask icon on the bottom, and that will create a black mask. That means it's hiding all this sharpening effect. And then I will take a brush. Shortcut for that is a B for the brush. With the left bracket key, I'll make it smaller. And right now I have black as a foreground color. To toggle that to white, I will click X on my keyboard. And now I have a white brush, and I can just paint onto the rocks to only apply this sharpening effect to these rocks. And that looks good to me. Now I want to bring in a little bit of color onto this image, but not too much. I just wanted to make it a little bit more vibrant. And for that, I will show you my favorite tool for adding color. It is better than vibrance and saturation sliders, and that is Selective Color. Now here is how we can use the Selective Color. I want to add more of each color on this down menu. So we'll start with reds. And as you can see, I don't have reds in here. I only have cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. But we know cyan is the opposite of reds. So if I take down cyan, that means I'm adding reds. Going into the next color, I have yellow, and I do have a yellow slider, so I will increase it to 100%. That means we're adding yellows to yellow. Then we'll move to greens, and we do not have greens in here, but we do have magenta, which is the opposite of green. So I will reduce the magenta. That means we're adding greens. We're moving on to cyan, and we do have a cyan slider, so we'll just increase that to 100. And then I will go to blues, and we do not have blues, but we have yellows, which is the opposite of blues. So I will take the yellows all the way to the left, and that means we are increasing the blues into the blues. And then the very last one is magenta, and we do have magenta, so I will increase it to 100. We will not mess with whites, neutrals, or blacks, just the colors. And then if you want to save this as a preset like I did, then you will go here into this lines dialog, click on it and say Save Selective Color Preset, and then you get to name it whatever you want. And then click Save. I already did that, so if you see here, I already have Color Boost and Color Pop. So once I click on those, then it does that same preset for me. And now we added color to our image. This is the before, this is the after. before and after, and that is the most natural way to add color to an image. It's really, when you have more vibrant colors like sunsets and so on, then you can really see the effect. Now, for example, right here, I don't like that the blues maybe are a little bit too blue. I don't want the saturated blue into the sky. So on here, if I go to blues, I can take the yellow back to normal, and then that means I'm reverting to blues to the way it was. So now this is our before and after. And we have color, but we did not adjust the blues. And I like that result better. Now that we did all the edits I wanted to do into Photoshop, I will right click on the layer and click flatten image. Once we flatten the image, now that means we just have it into one background layer. We will go to File and Close, and then click Save. And that will send the image back into Lightroom, and here is our edited image. So let's go to the original. This is the original, and if I reset it to the way it was, this is our original image and this is our edited image. So that is the before and that is the after. And just a little bit of changes, but makes a big difference. I hope you learned something new today and this was useful to you. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Skyler Ewing and I will see you in my next video.